Good evening, everybody. I'm Attorney Majel Shea B. De Guzman. I am your lecturer for Criminal Law Book 1. Our topic for today is Article 6 of the Revised Penal Code, which talks about the 3 stages of execution. The 3 stages of execution, particularly the attempted, the frustrated, and the consummated stages of a felony. Ngayon, yung pangatlo, yung consummated stage, madali lang intindihin. Pag sinabi natin consummated, you were able to perform all the acts of execution and the crime was actually committed. For example, ako, gusto kong patayin si Ronald, kumuha ko ng baril, tinutok ko sa ulo niya, pumutok, tinamaan siya, namatay siya. Okay. All the acts of execution were performed. And the crime of homicide was actually committed in its consummated stage. What else? Another example of consummated stage. Gusto kong sunugin yung bahay ni Ronald kasi naiinis ako sa kanya. Okay. So, anong ginawa ko? Kumuha ko ng gasolina, tinapon ko doon sa bahay niya, tapos sinilaban ko, naging abo yung bahay ni Ronald. In that case, all of the acts, all of the elements of arson were committed, and therefore, arson was committed in its consummated stage. Madali lang hindihin yun. Consummated, nagawa yung krimen. Okay. Dito tayo ngayon mag-focus sa attempted and frustrated stage. Let us learn and discover how to distinguish an attempted from a frustrated stage of a felony. Under Article 6, kunin nyo na po yung mga kodal ninyo, mga kapatid, and punta kayo sa Article 6. Attempted stage is defined as follows. It is when the offender commences the commission of a felony directly by overt acts and does not perform all the acts of execution which should produce the felony by reason of some cause or accident other than his own spontaneous desistance. Basahin niyo ulit yon. When the offender commences the commission of a felony directly by overt acts and does not perform all the acts of execution which should produce the felony by reason of some cause or accident other than his own spontaneous desistance. Yun yung definition. Makukuha natin doon ngayon yung tatlong elements ng attempted stage. Number 1, the offender commences the commission of the felony directly by overt acts. Okay. Balik kayo doon sa first video natin sa general principles, yung actus reus tsaka mens reus. Okay. Gusto kong patayin si Ronald. Sabi ko, patayin ko kaya si Ronald. Mens reus. Okay. Bumili ako ng lason. Okay. Actus reus. But is the act of buying poison an overt act of homicide or murder? No. Not yet. Diba? Kasi hindi naman porke bumili ka ng lason, may gusto ka nang patayin. In fact, it is not prohibited by law. Diba? Pwede ka namang bumili ng muriatic acid, diba? Sa mall. It is not prohibited. Because it is not an overt act of homicide or murder. Ngayon, para mas malinaw tayo, tignan natin muna yung definition, yung technical definition ng overt act. Under the law, it is some physical deed or activity indicating the intention to commit a particular crime, more than mere planning or preparation, which, if carried out on its complete termination following its natural course, without being frustrated by external obstacles, nor by the voluntary desistance of the perpetrator, will logically and necessarily ripen into a concrete offense. So, yun ang definition ng overt acts. Pasimplehin natin yung technical na definition na yon. Pag sinabing overt act, maiko-connect mo ito doon. Ibig sabihin, yung action na ginawa mo ay konektado doon sa krimen na gusto mong gawin. Pag ginawa mo yung act na iyon, alam na or makikita na yung intention mo na pumatay, in my case. For example, yung pagbili ng poison, hindi mo pa alam kung para saan yon. Tama? So, wala pa. Hindi pa yun direct. Okay, hindi pa yun overt act. Pero, okay, pag yung poison, okay, yung muriatic acid or chemical na yun, or fertilizer, or kung ano man yun, nilagay ko sa pagkain ni Ronald, is that already an overt act of homicide? In that case, yes. Kasi the moment na nilagay ko siya doon sa kanyang pagkain, makikita na yung intention ko na pumatay. Therefore, I have already entered the attempted stage of the felony or of the crime of homicide. Okay. Pag hindi, okay, ininom or kinain ni Ronald yung pagkain na may lason, attempted stage yon. Okay. Pag kinain niya or ininom niya yung pagkain or inumin na may lason, pero hindi siya tinablan, okay, dahil malakas yung resistensya niya, okay, malakas yung resistance niya sa poison, that is frustrated stage. Okay, i-discuss ko yan mamaya. Nasa third element yan. Now, element number 2. Okay, so yun yung element number 1 is overt acts. Okay, inumpisahan niya yung commission of the crime directly by overt acts. Number 2, he does not perform all the acts of execution which should produce the felony. Okay, balik tayo dun sa example ko kanina. Okay, nilagay ko yung lason doon sa pagkain niya, pero hindi niya ininom. Ang ibig sabihin, hindi nagawa lahat, okay, ng acts to bring about the felony. Okay, kasi hindi niya ininom. Okay, so, punta na tayo sa third element of the crime or element of attempted, which is the non-performance of all acts of execution was due to cause or accident other than his own spontaneous desistance. Ano nga ba ang ibig sabihin ng spontaneous desistance? Okay. Ang ibig sabihin ng spontaneous desistance ay yung kusang pagtanggi, okay? Or yung pagtalikod sa krimen. Okay, so, meaning ikaw, nagbago ng isip mo, ayaw mo na siyang patayin. Ako, nagbago ng isip ko, ayaw ko na siyang patayin. Okay. Ang sinasabi dito ng batas, yung attempted stage, other than my, okay, meaning, hindi na-commit yung krimen, okay, dahil, or hindi nang dahil sa umurong ako sa paggawa ng krimen. Hindi nagawa yung krimen dahil sa ibang dahilan, o dahil sa isang aksidente na hindi dahil sa akin. Okay, yun ang attempted stage. Balik tayo dun sa scenario ko. Yung sa scenario ko, nailagay ko na doon yung lason, pero hindi niya ininom. Okay, ang ibig sabihin, ang dahilan noon ay hindi ako, kundi siya. Okay, that is why it is already in its attempted stage. Okay, other than my own spontaneous desistance. Meaning, hindi ko naman sabing, ay, wag mong kakainin yan kasi may lason yan. Okay, hindi ko naman binawi sa kanya yung pagkain. Kapag ganun ang nangyari, halimbawa, pinigilan ko siya, okay, na kainin yung pagkain na may lason, nag-fall na siya doon sa tinatawag nating desistance. Desistance is actually an absolutory cause. Ang ibig sabihin ng absolutory cause, okay, the person will not be made liable for the felony as a general rule. Okay? Kasi the law gives premium to the act of turning your back against the crime. Okay? Provided that no real crime was actually committed. Okay? So, yun ang attempted stage. Okay. Tapos, yun din ang desistance. As I've said a while ago, desistance is an absolutory cause, provided that there's still no crime actually committed. Okay. Parang yung kanina, nilagay ko yung lason doon sa pagkain, tapos before niya kainin, sabi ko, ay, wag mo kainin yan, kasi may lason yan. Okay. That is desistance. Okay? Therefore, dahil tinalikuran ko yung krimen gusto kong gawin, I am not liable. Okay? Kasi hindi pa nagpa-pass. Okay? It has not yet passed the attempted stage. Okay? Pero, pag ang scenario ganito, gusto kong patayin si Ronald kasi nagigil ako sa kanya. Kinuha ko bumunot ako ng barel, tinutok ko sa kanya, pinutok ko. Pero hindi siya tinamaan. Tapos, nung unang putok na hindi siya tinamaan, sabi ko, ay, okay lang pala, hindi ko na pala siya papatayin. Okay, so, nag-desist na ako. In that case, is desistance is still absolutory? The answer would be no. Because it has already passed the attempted stage. Naiputok ko na eh. Diba? Naiputok ko na yung baril. Only that hindi siya tinamaan. The desistance that is considered absolutory is that which has not yet passed the attempted stage. Okay. So, those are the elements of the attempted stage of execution. Now, let us discuss the concept of an indeterminate offense para mas maintindihan natin yung attempted stage. Okay, last na. An indeterminate offense is one where the purpose of the offender in performing an act is not certain. The accused may be convicted for a felony defined by the acts actually performed by him up to the time of desistance. Okay. So, ang indeterminate offense ganito. Si Paulo, notorious siya na magnanakaw. Kilalang-kilala siya sa barangay nila na magnanakaw. Okay. Si Ronald, notorious din siyang mayaman. Okay. So, kilala din siya sa barangay nila na mayaman. So, dahil si Paulo ay isang notorious na magnanakaw, one night, pumunta siya sa bahay ni Ronald. Tapos, pagdating niya doon, tinatanggal niya na yung mga jealousy ng bintana ng bahay ni Ronald. Tapos, nakakreate na siya ng butas. Nabutasan niya na, tapos, hinihila niya na. Okay. Binubuksan niya na yung lock ng pintuan. At that point, nandito na si Nilgar, na isang kagawad, at inapprehend si Paulo. Huli ka! Ganyan. Now, question. Is Paulo liable for an attempted robbery or theft, as the case may be? Liable ba siya sa attempted stage? Okay, ng crime. This falls under the doctrine of indeterminate offense. Okay, where the purpose of the offender in performing the act is not certain. Hindi mo naman alam kung magnanakaw ba siya talaga doon. Binuksan niya lang naman yung bintana or yung jealousy. Okay? Therefore, the accused may be convicted for a felony defined by the act performed by him up to the time of apprehension. Okay? So, anong acts ang actually committed by Paulo? In that case, Paulo will be held liable for attempted trespass to dwelling, and not for attempted robbery, because it partakes in the nature of an indeterminate offense. Tama? Okay? Kasi hindi naman porke binubuksan niya or sinira niya. Okay? Yung jealousy, gusto niya nang magnakaw. Malay mo, gusto niya lang mag-trespassing. Diba? Therefore, by virtue of the doctrine of indeterminate offense, Paulo will be held liable for trespass to dwelling and not for attempted trespass to dwelling and not for attempted robbery. Okay, another instance. Okay. Si Paulo, kasama niya si Kate. Okay, ngayon si Kate, crush na si Kate. So, nung nakasama niya sa sasakyan, Paulo pressed a chemically soaked cloth on the mouth of Kate para makatulog, pampatulog. Okay. Tapos, umibabaw siya. Okay. Kay Kate. Okay. Now, question. Is Paulo already liable for attempted rape? Okay. In the case of Ballesteros versus People, decided on February 22, 2006, the Supreme Court ruled that the acts committed by Paulo towards Kate would only constitute unjust fixation and not for attempted rape. Okay? Because the act is not an overt act that will logically and necessarily ripen into rape. Okay, that is a decision of the court. Okay, so unjust fixation lang yun. Kasi, hindi pa daw yun overt act, sabi ng Supreme Court. Okay? Okay. According to the court, it would be considered, okay, an attempted rape, okay, if he tried to undress the victim or touch her private parts. In this case, he just laid on top of her and pressed a chemically soaked cloth to induce sleep. So, sabi ng court, wala pa daw siyang intensyon to rape. Okay, anyway, that's the decision of the court. Okay, so that is a doctrine of indeterminate offense, and that is the attempted stage of a crime. Now, let's go to the frustrated stage. Okay, frustrated stage of a felony. Let's now go to frustrated stage. Frustrated stage is when the offender performs all the acts of execution which would produce the felony as a consequence, but which, nevertheless, do not produce it by reason of causes independent of the will of the perpetrator. So, meron ulit tayo ditong tatlong elements. Number 1, offender performs all the acts of execution. Number 2, despite performing all the acts of execution, the crime is not committed. And number 3, the reason for the non-commission of the crime is for causes independent of the will of the perpetrator. Okay, yun ang frustrated stage. Ngayon, anong pinakaiba nito sa attempted? Doon sa attempted, hindi niya nagawa lahat. Okay? He does not perform all the acts of execution. Dito naman sa frustrated, the offender was able to perform all the acts of execution. Tama? Okay. For attempted and frustrated, pareho na the crime is not committed. Yung element number 2, pareho. The crime is not committed. Pero yung element number 3 na naman ay hindi pareho. Diba? Sa attempted stage, okay, the cause is other than the offender's spontaneous desistance. Pag sa frustrated naman, it is independent of the will of the perpetrator. Okay, lagi niyong tatandaan yan kasi ipaparecite ko yan, yung difference ng attempted tsaka ng frustrated. Okay. Sa madaling salita, okay, kapag attempted stage, okay, hindi niya natapos, hindi niya nagawa yung krimen. Okay. Dahil sa kadahilanan, okay, na hindi niya hawak. Okay. Sa frustrated stage naman, natapos niya yung krimen, okay, lahat, okay, nang kailangan niyang gawin, pero hindi pa rin nagawa yung krimen. Okay, that is the frustrated stage. Parang yung sinabi ko kanina, okay, nilagyan ko ng lason yung pagkain ni Ronald, ininom niya, pero kahit na ininom niya, buhay pa rin siya kasi malakas yung resistensya niya. Okay. That is a frustrated stage of the felony. Ngayon, for homicide, okay, or physical injuries, okay, we have what we call the mortal wound doctrine. Mortal wound doctrine. Okay. In order to know whether the killing is frustrated or attempted, you must determine the placement, okay, of the wound. If the wound, okay, was made, or if the attack was made on a important, okay, part of the body, like the neck, the heart, okay, yung mga internal organs, okay, important organs of the body, then, okay, it will be considered in the frustrated stage. Mortal. Ang ibig sabihin kapag nakakamatay, yung natamo mong sugat ay sa isang location ng body mo na nakakamatay, that will be considered in the frustrated stage. Pero pag yung sugat ay sa braso, sa paa, sa hita, meaning malayo sa bituka, meaning yun yung term, malayo sa bituka yung sugat na tamo mo, yun na i-consider na attempted stage. Okay. Now, para mas maintindihan natin itong attempted at frustrated, example tayo. In the crime of arson, okay, for arson, Okay. Ang frustrated stage, okay, for ang consummated stage ng arson, nangyayari if any part of the building or the structure is burned, even if only a small portion. So, for example, gusto mong sunugin yung bahay ni Ronald, nasunog mo na kahit maliit na portion lang ng bahay niya, garahe, that is already in its consummated stage. Frustrated stage kapag yung tools used are on fire or a thing not attached to the building. Okay? So, yung mga tools, yung mga tawag dito yung kahoy, okay, na pangsilab, okay, meaning they are already on fire, but the actual structure is not yet on fire, that would be considered on the frustrated stage. Okay. Now, it will be considered in an attempted stage if the tools to be used are in the building, but not yet on fire. So, yun ang arson. Yun ang consummated, frustrated, tsaka attempted ng arson.